You're listening to Who's Tom and Dick, a weekly podcast with your hosts, Martin Weavers, fighting stage 4 lung cancer, and Patrick Mortimer, living with heart disease. Why not grab yourself a cup of coffee, sit back, and enjoy the chatter as we discuss and share information, talking about tough subjects, and offering help, support, and motivation with a positive mental attitude.
Good morning, Patrick.
Morning, Martin. How are you today?
I'm doing right. I'm doing really good. So,
doing really good. You didn't say how
good
today, which surprises me.
We say so often we say hello, how are you? This I thought it's a different greeting today. So and it's quite exciting today because we're going to be talking about something completely different, aren't we?
We certainly are. Subject we've never touched on before, so it's very, very interesting.
I know. Shall I introduce our special guest?
Please do.
So today we're delighted to talk about a new subject, as I said on the podcast, gender reassignment. So we thought there'd be nobody better than the person I'm going to introduce to you now. So everybody, would you please welcome Kellie Maloney? Hello,
Kellie. Nice to meet
guys. You. How are you?
We're good, thanks.
We're both fantastic.
Well, that's good. And it's nice that you're talking about a subject that so many people don't know too much about. And I always find, because I do travel the country and travel to other countries talking about it, and I find it's the fear of the unknown that frightens so many people about it. So it's great that, two guys like yourself are putting it out there so other people will get to understand it and see it. It's all about education, it's all about all of us learning to accept each other as human beings and not judging people by our gender, our sexuality, our religion, our nationality, or the colour of our skin. To me, we're just human beings, so let's get on with life. It's short as it is, and we're not here forever.
No, I think you hit the nail on the head there, Kellie, by saying that, and that started us off perfect for perhaps you can. I mean, this we always say is the guests' show, so perhaps you could start off by telling us your story from the beginning and how you felt when you was younger and all like that.
Yeah,
I've done it countless times, but
I mean, it's hard to explain. I felt very different when I was growing up. I didn't know why, because obviously there was no internet, there was no role models out there, there was no counselling, and it was a taboo subject. I mean, I grew up in an Irish working class Catholic household with two brothers, a dad that was sports minded, and a mum that was I wouldn't say a stay-at-home mum, but a hard-working mum that run the house and worked. And a dad that loved his Guinness, his football, his horse racing, greyhound racing, and wanted his sons to be successful in whatever they did. He was a builder. And life wasn't always easy. My parents struggled being Irish. I mean, I remember them telling me when I was born, my mother was thrown out of her one-bedroom digs because she had a baby. My dad was working away, and they walked around the whole of South London looking for a place. And on many doors there was no blacks, no dogs, and then at the bottom, no Irish. So it became very hard. And I hear certain stories my dad used to tell me, and my mum has told me. Unfortunately, my dad has passed away in 2009. My mum is still with us, but she's 91 and got dementia now, and that's such a sad illness. It's, I've been with her all this week because this time last week we got a call saying prepare us for the worst. And I flew home from the Algarve, and I've been with her every day, but she seems to have picked up a little bit. So I'm having a day off today from visiting her. Because you're sitting there and you're just sitting looking at a person actually dying in front of you, and it is such a sad sight, because my mother's always been my rock, and I'll feel that more in as I go forward. But so I think life, as you two guys know, does serve some horrible twists, and we don't know why. Two of the most dreaded illnesses that we all fear, I believe, is cancer and dementia. And many of us suffer with heart attacks because of the stressful world we live in at the moment.
Yeah.
It's I had a heart attack in 2009 and it was all related to stress and trying to achieve things that I now realise. Why did I chase them? Why was I so fixation on material stuff instead of enjoying life? But to go back to my story, I knew I was different. I didn't know why. And then at the age of 12 or 13, I read an article in the Sunday People about a trans woman called April Ashley, probably one of the most famous ones ever in Britain. And
Apart from yourself, of course, Kelly.
well, we're a different generation. I mean, I wish I'd known about her earlier. And I read how she struggled and what she went through her life. And I thought, that's how I feel. This is me. And at that time, we were known as, I think the word was sex change, which is crazy. And I read this and I thought, and I saw how the papers destroyed her for a number of weeks. And I thought, no, can I ever admit to this? How can I tell my father I'm not the son he thinks I am? What do I tell my mum? And what would happen if the papers found out? And this was when I was just an ordinary kid. So I kept the article and I read it regular. And then I read another article a few years later. I was a bit older, on a trans woman called Chula. She was a James Bond girl.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And they destroyed her in the Sun when they found out she was another transsexual. And Caroline Crossley, who now lives in America and avoids all publicity, which I think is a good thing. And we have spoken a number of times, and she has told me that, what she thought of my transitioning and how I've helped other people and what she went through. So I decided to hide this. And I was a publican, very jolly little South London Cockney. I had a pub in East London. I was a Millwall supporter and I regularly went to Millwall. And I, before that, I got into boxing through school. I used to get into a lot of fights because I was small and people used to bully me. So I used to fight regular. And the PE teacher just grabbed me and said, Maloney, if you want to fight, there's the place you fight. And he threw a pair of boxing gloves at me. And I took up boxing and I really enjoyed it. And my father encouraged me. So, I had about 69 amateur fights, but I never really grew. And I knew I couldn't go pro. And again, I would look at these stories about April Ashley, which I hid in my room, these stories. And I just thought, I can't admit to this. And there was still no outlet or anyone to talk to. And I thought, how can I tell my mum and dad? They're devoted Roman Catholics. We go to the church every Sunday. I was an altar boy. There was no one to talk to. So I just continued with life. And my dad was on the committee of a boxing club in southeast London, helping to keep kids off the street. And the trainer there asked me, would I like to become a trainer? So I took my ABAM coaching course, passed. And from that moment, I stayed in the training side of boxing, which I did enjoy. And then a couple of my boxers wanted to go pro, and they asked me if I would get a professional license. And I didn't at first want to. And then a couple of them signed with the new young promoter at the time, Frank Warren. And Frank approached me and asked me if I would join him as a trainer, which I did do. And I worked for Frank for a number of years, a couple of years. We had a fallout. And I moved away from boxing, just built my pub trade up. And then another young fighter came and asked me if I would manage him. And again, I refused at first. But my father said, come on, it's a great opportunity. So I took it up and I went into boxing management and I built a young stable up. But I always wanted better than I had. I saw how people struggled, and I used to listen to the likes of Mickey Duff and obviously Frank Warren, who was making headways at that time. And they all talked about, if you want to be successful, you've got to have a heavyweight. And out of the blue, Lennox Lewis came along from a phone call from a journalist and told me about Lennox. And I said, but he's a Canadian, because at this time Henry Cooper had just gone, Joe Bugner had just gone, and Frank Bruno had come in. And Frank Bruno was the darling of the British publics. I don't know if you've watched that new documentary called Four Kings. I actually watched it last night, and it's quite fascinating, about 4 black athletes. Lennox Lewis, Frank Bruno, Nigel Benn and Chris Eubanks at that time were the most dramatic boxers that we had, and they both fought within a week of each other, and over 1 billion people watched it on TV. It was one of the best moments for British boxing. It's a great documentary. So, besides my own documentary called Knockout Blonde, which we're going
to come to later,
which is now out. About that. Lennox Lewis came into my life, and against all odds, he signed with a little promoter a manager from Peckham called Frank Maloney, and my life totally changed.
Can I just ask, because obviously you said he was Canadian, and
no, he lived in Canada. They told me he was Canadian. I said he was Canadian, sorry, and they told me to check up, and I actually checked. He was actually born in West Ham.
Yeah, that's what I was going to get to. Yeah,
yeah, and he went to Canada when he was 12 years old. His mother took him there, and I don't think a young person has much choice if your mother at 12 takes you to a foreign country. So I brought him back, and I explained to him that how Bruno was so successful at being a loser. And I don't mean that derogatory, but it was Bruno hadn't won a world title. We'd had 2 challenges and lost them. And I said, imagine if you won the British title and you were English. And I told this to the investors that I was trying to raise the money from. And I said, you could make it, open your own bank. And they jumped on and one of the investors, or one of the team from the investors, was John Hollands, the ex-Chelsea manager.
Right, yeah, he used to play for Arsenal.
Yeah, played for Arsenal as well.
Yeah.
Did he? I didn't know that.
It's my team.
And he pushed for it because he liked the idea, and eventually they gave me the go ahead to negotiate a contract with Lewis. So I sort of said to Lennox, what do you want in this contract? Because it wasn't my money. He told me what he wanted. I put it all in the contract. I took it back to the company, and they agreed it. And in 1989, Lewis signed a 3-year contract with me, and the journey started. And I realised that I could never, ever own up to my gender issue because of Lennox Lewis. I saw what it done to it, and what would it do to someone that's managing a future world heavyweight champion. And the more successful I became, the harder it became. And then my dad put me on a pedestal and everything else. But no one saw the person that, away from all the limelight, away from being the arrogant little Cockney man who wore the Union Jack suit and who didn't care what he said. No one saw the person that would sit there and cry themselves to sleep, would drink themselves unseen to the public, drown their sorrows with drink. No one see the person that was fighting with themselves. On one shoulder was Frank saying, you're the manager of Lennox Lewis. On this shoulder there was Kellie saying, you're in the wrong body. And they were battling with each other. And at that time, obviously, Frank's personality was a lot bigger than Kellie's. And of course, I was married. I had children. I'd done everything that was expected of me to do. But eventually, it got to where I started having suicidal thoughts. The stress got bigger. The pressure got bigger. And I had to make a decision, and I'd started counselling because obviously now I'd read so much more. There was internet, and there were counsellors, and there were support groups, and I started going to support groups, unknown, but not as Frank, obviously. I made up this false narrative around myself, so no one knew who I really was, and I got more cut. And then my father died in 2009. And I felt that a certain responsibility and weight was lifted from my shoulders because my father had me on a pedestal. And I had so much respect for my father because it was my father's constant telling me, I can achieve it when I had doubtful days. And, I had so much respect for him that I couldn't let him down. I didn't want to let him down. And the day he died, the day before he died that night in 2009, I took his hand and I wanted to tell him, Dad, I'm not the person you think I am. I couldn't get them words. And the only words I could say was, Dad, I love you. I left my dad that day, tears streaming down my eyes. The next morning, about 6 o'clock, when I was out walking my dogs, I got a phone call and I was told my father passed away during the night. And it just felt relief in one way. And then one night I was sitting indoors crying my eyes out and drinking, and my partner Tracey came down and she asked me what the problem was, and I said, I can't tell you. And at this time I was now destroying my family. I wasn't hardly speaking to my ex partner. We were sleeping in separate rooms. The house, I was being horrible to my children in certain ways. I just wasn't communicating with anyone. I was cutting myself off from the world and again contemplating ending my life. And it just came out of my mouth. I said to her, I don't know how to tell you this, but I'm like you. And I knew when the words came out of my mouth, my marriage was over. And I also remember my counsellor, who I'd started seeing, told me, the day you take this the Pandora box, you can never put it on. And I think that was the day Kellie was sort of more born and came more in and became stronger. And I started, we tried to live with it. Tracey said, I'm sure we can work this out. We tried, it just got worse. Eventually I moved out of the family house and moved to a home quite a long way away. And the only person who knew was Tracey. And then she invited me back for Christmas. And I came back and I thought, you know what? I've lived for 60 years as Frank. How much more long have I got? I can fight this. I can beat this. And I don't want to lose my family. So I gave notice of my flat. I took everything out. I went to back, cut my hair and everything. And I went back, and at the door, when Tracey opened it, she saw the big bag. She saw my 2 dogs, and she asked me what I said, I want to move back in and try and make this work out. She said, it's too late now. It's, we can be friends, but we can't be together. And I think that upset me. I drank very heavily that day. And next thing I knew, I went walking with the dogs, but I took a load of pills and everything else and a bottle of wine. And I remember a paramedic saying, sir, are you all right? And someone went, that's Frank Maloney, the boxing promoter. He was in the pub at lunchtime. I went, yeah, I drank too much. I just tripped. And the paramedic leant forward and said, sir, and whispered, you haven't drunk too much and you didn't trip. We need to take you to the hospital. And I panicked and I didn't want to go to hospital. And I pushed him out of the way and I got up and I grabbed my 2 dogs, staggering, and I walked off. And I kept feeling in my pocket for the pills and the wine. Obviously, the paramedics had taken them off me. And I walked for hours. And then eventually I went back down. And I just wanted to die, but I didn't have the courage to do it. And I went back home. And Tracey answered the door and she saw the state I was in. She asked me where I'd been. I told her. And she went, you are one selfish bastard. You would kill yourself on Christmas Day. Your children could never, ever celebrate Christmas or enjoy Christmas. She said, you've got to sort yourself out. She said, you've got to face the truth and do what you want to do, but do not destroy your family. I went to my other daughters in a bad state. How I got there, I don't know, but I did. Eventually, I told Emma, my oldest daughter, that an evening or so, a bit later, and she told me my daughters were worried about me and my health, and they thought I had an illness and I wasn't telling them and I was dying. So I explained to her, and she went, I know nothing about this subject. She went, but I would rather have my dad dressed in a wooden box. And she gave me a cuddle and she said, I will learn everything about it. And I moved to Maidstone to be near Emma because she lived in that area. And my life sort of took an easy. I started withdrawing from the boxing world bit by bit. I had a fighter that committed suicide, Darren Sutherland, and that really freaked me out. That was the time when I had my heart attack. That was just before Christmas. So that was in 2009. So all the dates get muddled up with me. So I knew I knew about suicide, and I had a lot of counselling over it, because also my right hand man, Dean Powell, who was my sort of conscience in boxing and my fixer in boxing and done everything for me, he also committed suicide at a very early age, and he threw himself under the London to Brighton express train at New Cross Gate. And I could not work out why these two young people that were successful and had their life in front of them, why they committed suicide. And that played on my mind. And even though I'd contemplated it myself, but I suppose, I don't know. Are you brave if you commit suicide? Are you insane at that point? And these were questions I kept asking my counsellor. And she actually said, at the point that you do it, you're insane. And these things always played on my mind, but they were there. But I started to live more as Kellie, and I'd signed David Price, another heavyweight, and we were on a roll with him. He got beat by Tony Thompson in a fight that I should never have made, but I made because I knew if we'd won that fight, he would have got a crack at the world title. He and his lawyer insisted on a rematch, and I didn't want the rematch. I told David if he went this way, we could get to the world title fight, and he believed he could win the rematch shot. And I said, look, sometimes the rematches end up in the same result, and it's not very good. If I was you, let me do my way, have 3 or 4 fights, win them, and then we'll fight this guy. He'll have had a couple of art fights and he'd be a bit older, because he was like Tony Thompson. He was a bit older. But the lawyer and David said, in the contract, if we want a rematch, it says you have to deliver it. So I delivered it. I did deliver it. And I remember walking out of that room saying to my daughter and my lawyer, do you know something? A couple of years ago, I would never agree to this. I'm not the same person I used to be. And they didn't know I was going through having hormone treatment, and I'd started my transitioning very privately with a private doctor. And I said, yes, we'll win, lose or draw. This will be my last fight. The result was the same. David got knocked out again. And I walked away from boxing, and I now started living full time as Kellie and going to my support group and being more active in the community. But unknown to me, someone at my support group had worked out who I was and had tipped off a newspaper. And then the paper turned up at my house one day asking about my alternative lifestyle. A big argument on the doorstep happened, because thankfully I just opened the door in jeans and a t-shirt and flip-flops, just very sort of dressed very casual. So my hair was tied back, and and my dogs were barking, so it sort of made me scared. And I said to the journalists, if you print anything, I will sue you. And they went, well, we're running the story on Sunday. So again, I had to contact the lawyers, my lawyer, who by now had known what I was going through, and he arranged for me to see a QC up at the Temple. We managed to stop the story, and we were fighting it for a few months. We fought it, but the cost was getting so high and high that my lawyer advised me that I had to do, and the QC said, look, you've got to do something. You've either got to tell your story with a newspaper, or you've got to put something out on social media, because if it gets out on the internet, the paper can then run it, and we can't stop it. So I arranged for my daughter and my lawyer to meet with every newspaper. Eventually, they were happy with the Daily Mirror, because they gave us editorial rights, headline rights, and picture rights. And we were allowed to read it, or my counsellor was allowed to read it and check all the terminology was right. Because I didn't want the word sex changed in there, because I can't change my sex. My sex is male and it will always be male, but my gender is female. So I wanted the right words used, gender reassignment surgery. And the Mirror done a great job on it. And my story broke. My life went mad. I was pulled from pillar to post. I was in the newspapers throughout the whole world. I was on every news station. And I lost control of my life, if I'm honest. Um, and I feared that I'd be rejected in society. I would lose my family. I was very lucky that I didn't lose my family, and I lost a number of friends. I lost a few colleagues, but not as many as I thought I would. And I found that quite a lot of people were quite supportive of me. There was obviously, and there still is, the keyboard warriors who like to attack me or attack my community. And I just get on with them. I just think to myself, these are little guys that are scared to come out in the open. They would never say it to my face. So whatever they write, and I've been insulted by far better people than them, like Don King, Frank Warren, Eddie Hearns, Mickey Duff, even Donald Trump has insulted me at one time at a meeting. So, these people who sit on a keyboard in a dark room drinking Stella, don't offer me any fear or any fright. So it's water off a duck's back. And I think and I also think working in the boxing world has helped me. It made me a bit tougher. And I started living my life full time. Eventually my daughters were able to accept me. I went in the Big Brother house in 2014, which was a mistake at the time, but
You're very good on it, though. I remember we watched it, me and my wife, and he was very good on it.
I don't think I've never watched it, but I've listened to reports, and I feel I was very emotionally. I was not there. I was not the person you're talking to today.
Right, yeah.
If I'd left it for 18 months, 2 years, people would have seen a much different Kelly. One person, but it took me time because my life was out of my control. I had agents telling me to go here, go there. I was letting them run my life, And eventually, I sat down with my family, and they said, "Look, you've always been in control of your own life. As a boxing promoter, you done what you done. You didn't do what other people do. Now you're being led by the nose, and you're doing things you don't want to do, or you're constantly in the news, silly photographs of me in a swimwear, silly interviews of me talking about romance and that, and that wasn't what I. So I took control of my own life, and I'm glad to say, since then, I've been a lot better. I've had a few ups and downs in that time, but I'm a much better person now. I've got my family around me, and they're great support, and I've got very good friends around me. And the only thing I now choose what I want to do. I don't do as much. I hardly do any TV work now because I can't be bothered with all the arguments and the hostility towards the community. Some say I should be out there fighting for my community, but I also feel I have a life to lead and a life to enjoy. I've done so much in my life that, and I'm not here forever. I'm in my 70s now, so I really want to enjoy what time I've got left on with my family and with friends. And going back to a question I said earlier, why was I chasing everything? I now realise everything in the world is material. You don't need all that to be happy. It doesn't make you happy. It makes you angry. It makes you envious of other people because they might have a big car and you want a bigger car. They might have a big television, you want a bigger television. And none of that really matters. What matters is your contentment, your happiness, and your peace. And I've actually got all that now. And it's taken a long time for me to get there, but I'm there. And for whatever time I'm left on this earth, I'm just going to be me and enjoy my life and do what I want to do. Like you contacted me to do your podcast. I chose to do this. I wasn't asked to do it by anybody else other than an email from yourselves. And I do a few interviews. I am doing a few more than normal because obviously my documentary's out and I'm promoting that. But I think that's probably the last thing I'm going to do. And I'm just going to, while I'm here, I'm just going to enjoy life. I'd like still to do talks to companies, but again, there are a lot younger people about there now. And to be honest, I don't understand the world anymore. All the different genders, all the different sexualities. It's a completely different world to me. As I said, I grew up in a world that was black and white, no grey area. But since transitioning, I see lots of colours out there in the world, but I don't understand them. But I have no envy towards anyone. And if someone says to me they're non-binary, they're gender neutral, I say, as long as you're happy, that's all that counts.
Yeah.
I'm not one that's going to judge you, because I've been there and I've been judged, and I don't think it's very nice. I'm also one of from the community. Like I think the LGBTQ sometimes are too militant and trying to force things too quick. You can't change the world. Everything takes time, and we have to realize that we have to show the people. Like the other day, I read an article where some trans youth went to a meeting and they lit off a load of cockroaches and insects in this meeting, which was, shall we say, an anti-trans meeting. But that's not the way to win. That's only going to turn more people against us. The only way to win and the only way to bring peace is for us all to get around the table, all come to an agreement, and accept that not everyone will agree with us, but they don't have the right to deny our existence. And if we can get to that point, we're going to win. And also, just let's respect each other as human beings, not respect each other as labels, because people love to label people. Yeah, I don't tell everyone I'm a trans woman, but I don't deny I'm a trans woman. If I'm asked, I will say yes. If I'm not asked, I just continue my life as I am.
It's not their business, really, is it, Kelly? I mean, you've done what you've done, and it's your life.
Yeah, and that's how I look at it. I look at it like this. People at one time, gender reassignment or trans people were seen to be mentally disturbed, and that has now been cleared up. I actually have never been mental, because when I started my treatment, I asked a psychiatrist, and they said to me, "Well, are you mad?" And I went, "I don't think so." They went, "Well, you've answered your own question." I think it is an illness, and it's because I believe this: if you were born with a hole in the heart, with an arm missing, with something wrong, they can see that at birth, and they will fix that. And everyone will say how wonderful that surgeon was. Unfortunately, ours is our brain doesn't match our body, and at this moment we can't see into the brain. If they could see into the brain when you were born, they would fix it there, and no one would know. So, and if it isn't a medical problem, why do we need doctors? Why do we need medical care to correct it? So, to me, it's a medical problem. And all I've done is corrected it.
I thought that's why I wanted you to come on the podcast, because you read so many things in the papers about you read things on TV, but now you've told your whole story, and so the people who listen to us will know how you're feeling through it all. So do you think there's actually enough done by the NHS now to help people like yourself and others?
Well, no, I don't think there's enough NHS done for anyone. Everyone with an illness is suffering in the NHS, aren't the people in the corridor? There's not enough money. The NHS was great when it was first started, but the government haven't kept up the payments. I think they brought in too many management people who are not medically professional people to run the NHS, and it's lost its focus. I mean, this new Minister for Health is doing this consultancy thing to find out what's wrong. You don't need a consultant. We know what's wrong with the NHS. There's too many managers and not enough doctors and not enough nurses.
So when you had all your, because you've obviously had the complete operation now, haven't you?
I went private.
That's what I was going to say. Was it NHS or was it private?
No, it was private, because the NHS wait was too long. And again, that's part of the problem, I believe, for my community, that the NHS are not. I think there's only about 3 or 4 doctors, and I may even be wrong, so people could correct me, that can actually do the the operation, the final regender assignment surgery operation. I know the doctors that done mine was one of the best in the country, but he's now passed away, and I think he was training a couple of doctors when he done my operation, which was in 2015.
You've certainly come up in life through a predominantly male, I don't know what the word is, a male environment, I suppose.
Yeah, male environment. Yeah.
And your dad being a builder, everything's been sort of against you, really, hasn't it?
Well, yes and no. I mean, we are responsible for our own destiny eventually. I ask myself, could I have transitioned earlier? The answer is yes. But then I look at it and then think, I may not be the same person I am today. My journey to get to where I am today has taught me so much about life, so much about the world. It's given me a great family. So I feel I'm very lucky. And the mistakes I made as Frank, I won't make them as Kellie. I've taken the good from Frank and put that with the good from Kellie.
Mm-hmm.
And as I say, I'm a contented, happy person now, which I never was before.
And you've written 2 autobiographies, and you've got a documentary out now.
Yes, the documentary is on a number of streaming services. I believe it's doing quite well at the moment. It's called Knockout Blonde, the Kellie Maloney story. Yeah. And I'm getting good feedback from it. I'm getting a number of people saying how brave I was, but I don't think I was brave. And you see this question in the documentary. I think it was a necessity for me to go through what I went through and to do my final operation. So yeah, it's just I hope it helps people, and I hope it helps people who don't understand what we go through understand a bit more, and just see us as human beings.
I can relate to the material items that you said you strive for in life. When you have a heart attack and you're lying in hospital and you think, hang on a minute, material items mean nothing. And I don't know about you, Martin, but it's nice to wake up and look out and see the blue sky and you take that in.
Oh, every day's a lovely day for me now.
As I say, my father was not a wealthy man, hard-working, hard-playing Irishman. But I remember he always used to say to me, you can have all the money in the world. If you haven't got your health, you've got no life. And I think he was so true on that. My father died at 86 with cancer, but as he said, he lived a great life up till then, and it was his time to go.
Yeah. So your autobiography, is that available on Amazon and places?
I think so. I think it's still out there. It's called Frankly Kellie, and the one previous to that was No Baloney from Peckham to Las Vegas. That's about my boxing career. I believe it's still. I believe you can still get it if you go on Amazon. There are people who still sell it, and there are bookshops that still stock it. But it came out in 2015, 2016.
So do you? I think listening to what you've spoke about today, you feel a lot happier now as Kellie today than you did as Frank years ago.
Yeah, I'm in a much better place. I smile a lot more where Frank didn't smile a lot. I enjoy people's company, and I'm a lot more tolerant. I'm a lot more kinder and a lot more patient. So, as I said, I take in the good things from Frank and the good things from Kellie, and I've moulded them all into the person I am today.
Yeah, and you're living a happy life in Portugal, although you're over here in England at the moment. And,
yeah, I live between both.
You've got these little animals that you stay with.
Yes, I rescue animals in Portugal. I have pigs, ducks, turkeys, geese, dogs. I have a great life. I find them so. I find animals very peaceful and very loyal and they're non-judgmental, and that's what I like about them.
Yeah. And do you live alone or?
Yep, I live alone. I live with Yogi Bear. That's my big dog. Teddy Bear and Winnie Bear. They're my 3 dogs that live in the house. And then I have all the animals outside in the fields.
Fantastic.
So who looks after them when you're away?
Well, I have friends, and I have a guy who does it. He comes to the house and stays there and feeds everybody and looks after them. Yeah, I come back to England on a regular basis. Maybe I'll do a 2-day. This time I'm here. I've been here for 7 days. So yeah, it just depends what's going on.
Yeah. Well, Kellie, I know you've got a busy day today, so I want to take the opportunity to say thank you so much for coming on the podcast. And it's, as I said, if you've helped one person who's going through what you went through in your life, then it's been fantastic. So
it certainly has. I mean, it's a subject I've not really taken in, to be honest with you, and I've just sat here riveted, absolutely riveted. And I appreciate you coming on. Thank you very much.
No, thank you for inviting me. And I'm glad I got the opportunity to talk to some people that may never know about the subject, as you said, and hopefully tell them not to be afraid of anybody that's going through gender reassignment surgery, because we're not the bogeyman. We're just the same as you, and we're just correcting something and making ourselves a happier human being.
Yes.
Well, thank you very much, Kelly. Much appreciated.
No, thank you, and all the best to you both.
Well, there you go, Patrick. I tell you what, that was, like you just said at the very end, that really opened my eyes to a subject I don't really know a lot about neither.
No, I was quite amazed. I was just sat here riveting. Not riveting, but riveted to the conversation.
Yeah.
I was learning everything as I went, because I haven't really looked at the subject in any detail or come across anybody in a similar position to Kelly. So it was all new to me.
Well, I had 2 pages of questions, and Kelly actually answered virtually everything with her whole life story. So
what I tried to say to her was that her life from day one was in a male-dominated environment, really, boxing, football. So it was very, very hard for her to come out. I can see that. It must have been almost impossible. Well, she's from our era, isn't she? I mean, it's more accepted today. And the young probably don't need so much education. Us oldies that need the education, really.
Yeah, and I hope, as I said, in the interview, that even if one person is helped by all that, then this interview has been well worthwhile, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's nice to touch on different subjects that we do every week.
Yeah, great. Okay, Martin, well,
thank you, Patrick.
To see you nice.
To see, yeah. And we'll do it all again next week, shall we?
Yeah. Okay, guys, thanks for joining us again this week, and we'll see you again, same place.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
You've been listening to the Who's Tom and Dick podcast with your hosts, Martin Weavers and Patrick Mortimer. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the show on Apple, Spotify, or your favorite streaming platform. New episodes are available every Friday. Thanks for tuning in.